Hi guys, Chris Duckman, body engineer. I want to talk to you today about something that is very, very close to my heart, and that is post-traumatic stress. What you'll notice is I didn't use the word post-traumatic stress disorder. For me personally, I think it's very disrespectful to consider a natural human physiological response to stress to be a disorder. So you won't hear me saying that. For me, post-traumatic stress, okay? Who can get post-traumatic stress? Anyone is the short answer. A mum can get post-traumatic stress after a delivery, a baby can get post-traumatic stress after the arrival. When we say post-traumatic stress, PTS, we naturally associate it with people in the armed services, first responders, because of what they're subjected to on a day-to-day basis. For me, with the work I've done over the last 15, 16 years and 20,000 treatments, what I've realised is my definition of post-traumatic stress would be an event or combination of events, physical or emotional, that lock the body in either a fight or flight or a disconnected, dissociative state. That would be my personal definition. Very rare when we look at someone's history is it one event that pushed them over the edge. Sometimes it happens. Most of the time, every single one of us is a walking, talking library book of what we've been through in life. A walking, talking library book of unresolved trauma. That's the significant word, unresolved. Because if we've suffered an experience and the body's self-healed, it's no longer relevant. But if it's unresolved, we have to develop compensatory patterns to work around it. So a few years ago, I developed an engineering theory, a concept about post-traumatic stress that I wanted to test. So I went to Canada. I wanted to test my theory on people I didn't know. I went to work for a charity called Camp My Way with Terence Kosika. And these guys were specifically geared at helping people with post-traumatic stress, first responders and veterans. So I went over there, we were helicoptered up into the mountains in Vancouver, and I worked on these guys, and we had a very high degree of success. So what happened off the back of that is an army medic, a lovely lady called Beata Zappler, who was following what we were doing in the Canadian Army. She contacted me, and I ended up on the east coast of Canada, working with the medical teams there and explaining some of the theories and the engineering concepts that helped us to deactivate those fight or flight tones. I'm going to explain to you very, very briefly. I know this is a longer video than I've done in the past, but it's a very important subject. And I'm sure that those people who have an interest in this is relevant to will follow it. But for me, the engineering theory was very, very simple. A series of events occurred which again lock the body in this fight or flight state. So you can take that person, put them on a beach in Barbados without a care in the world. It doesn't matter, that the damage has been done. The body's locked in this compensatory vicious cycle of mechanical compensation, and when that happens, it's good night. Yeah. So the engineering theory was to reverse that process. Okay. So there are three cogs in the clock. These are often looked at independently in isolation of one another, but I found that the three of these together created the perfect cycle for post-traumatic stress to manifest. So the first one was an event or series of events would malalign the head on the top of the neck. The head wouldn't sit properly on the top of the atlas axis joint. That has the impact of tightening the jaw, impacting on the trigeminal nerve, and it also gives us a sense of tension in the neck and shoulders. Okay, that was the first one. When we get this misalignment in the skull, it affects an opening that we have on left and right sides of the base of the skull called the jugular foramina. What that does is it impacts on the blood supply, the blood flow draining from the brain back to the heart like a plumbing system, but also it affects three cranial nerves 9, 10 and 11. Now cranial nerve 10 is our vagus nerve, our fight or flight nerve, and cranial nerve 11 is our accessory nerve. So the first part is the head doesn't line up properly. Second part, the vagus nerve becomes compromised. The third part is probably the clinically most severe, which a lot of my fellow professionals may not have connected the dots in the way that I was lucky enough to stumble across. And it made a massive difference to my therapeutic protocol and the results I was getting with the chronic cases and post-traumatic stress. And that's basically the ventral vagus nerve controls the top third of the esophagus. Now for me, when I understood that, the penny started to drop. The top third of the esophagus, the pipe that carries the food and liquid down to the stomach, if this pipe shortens, naturally the stomach elevates under the left side of the ribs. So in extreme cases that may cause hiatus hernia, but if you follow the anatomy, the left and right vagus nerves follow the esophagus down through the hiatus. So what I realized was any shortening of the esophagus Even if we didn't have something as clinically severe as a hernia, there would always be a distortion in the hiatus. So what we end up with is a situation where you've got your right vagus nerve at the back, then your esophagus, and then your left vagus nerve at the front. It's like a sandwich. So any distortion of the hiatus would always impact on either left, right, or indeed both vagus nerves. So have you ever seen the big strong men pulling the trucks on World's Strongest Man? If they get hold of the rope where it connects to the truck, they can pull and that truck's not going anywhere. They go to the other end and they gently lean in and that truck starts to move. This is a very similar principle here, where we've got the pathway of the vagus nerve and all the associated fascia that it passes through. And I realised we could do all the amazing work in the cranium to release the vagus nerve up here and realign the skull. But if we didn't release the pressure on the vagus nerves in the hiatus, that distal pull over time would cause a regression. Yeah? So basically what we did is we developed the workshops last year in 2019 to be able to share this knowledge, simple protocols that we can follow the anatomy of the vagus nerves using simple hands-on, gentle, safe techniques, and it all terminates in finishing and releasing around the hiatus. When we did this and we could take the pressure off the vagus nerve, people were not regressing, they were making significant impact, the IBS, the stress, the tension, the anxiety, because they were releasing pressure off the heart and lungs as well. All of this was significantly reducing. And along with the self-help exercises, and obviously the intervention of other professionals, then the talking therapies, for example, would have a much greater impact when the mechanical and the physiology was balanced again. So this really addresses the mechanical effects of day-to-day life and, as we mentioned earlier, the effects of unresolved trauma that ultimately apply pressure to the central nervous system via muscles, bones, ligaments, organs. Yeah? If you've got a stone in your left shoe, you will naturally put most of your body weight on the right leg because it's uncomfortable. Over time, the right side will then develop issues and imbalances. Yeah? So there's always a cause and an effect. And with post-traumatic stress, what I found is that we've had significant improvements in people's quality of lives and their symptoms by doing the simple things. Realigning the base of the skull onto the top of the atlas axis joint, following the path of the vagus down, releasing sternocleidomastoid trapezius because they're innervated by cranial nerve 11. So in stage 2, when the vagus nerve and cranial nerves 9 and 11 are compromised, what you'll find is cranial nerve 11 will always innervate sternocleidomastoid and trapezius when it's compromised. So we end up, I'm sure you'll see people like this with one shoulder higher than the other, but from a structural perspective, it impacts on the entire body. The shoulder lifts, the rib cage lifts, the hip lifts and inwardly rotates. So not only is there a neurological component because the nerve is compromised, but you've then got a structural imbalance as well. So what I found is when we get the twist in the hiatus and the vagus nerve is compromised here, the body senses that increased pressure on the brainstem, and its response is to further tighten the neck and shoulder muscles. At that point, this is just my personal opinion from experience, at that point you've created that vicious mechanical cycle of compensatory patterns, which again, my personal opinion is we need a mechanical intervention then to break the cycle, unravel all three aspects, and then we're minimizing the chance of a regression. So the work we've done to date has been very, very exciting. We're developing it to the next level with the help of the guys I'm working with. What's very, very exciting and I want to share with you in the next video is a project that I'm involved with some veterans and members of the armed services, where we're going to actually try and offer these tools to veterans through the legions, soldiers hopefully through the army medics and the physios, first responders, police, paramedics, fire service. We want to be able to offer these simple hands-on skills by training someone on campus, on site, to be able to treat and look after all the other guys. So that's a very, very exciting project which we're going to be launching as soon as we can get hands back on, which we're hoping is going to be early in June. So we're starting that project here in Jersey in the Channel Islands, but it's going to go global. That's the aim. So watch this space. That'll be a little bit more information on the next video. Hope that's made a little bit of sense. Any questions at all, please feel free to get in touch. And obviously, you take good care of yourselves. All the best.